The advice-driven world that we live in, from these YouTube videos to podcasts to business books, it can get a little confusing. And the way that I've found to cope with it is the simple framework of all rules have two sides. It's funny the things that stick with you. I had this speech class in college where this guy was teaching presentation skills. He gave the lesson, don't ever say the phrase, "I know what you're thinking," while giving a speech. Because if they don't know what you're thinking, they're gonna tune out. And I went forward with that assumption for the last 6 or 7 years. I haven't used the phrase, "I know what you're thinking." But then I read this book by Scott Adams called Win Bigly, and it's all about how Donald Trump is a master persuader, and that's why he won the election. But there's this portion of the book where Scott Adams goes on an aside and says that he uses the phrase, "I know what you're thinking," as a motivational tool. Like for instance, "I know what you're thinking. Why is this guy going on a big rant about Trump?" If you're thinking that, it's like I'm reading your mind and you'll pay more attention. If you're not thinking that, you'll think I just said, "I know what you're thinking," as a literary device, and you'll ignore that statement. Which is the exact opposite of what my speech teacher said. And yet, I could go forward on the assumption that either one is true, and my life would be just the same. All rules have two sides. Another good example of this is embrace rejection versus accept rejection. A lot of the traditional entrepreneurs teach going out and getting rejected because rejection builds up your business sense. The more people that say no to you, the easier it is to take the no, and then the more yeses you'll eventually get, because every no gets you closer to a yes. And it goes back to a bigger point about openness as an entrepreneur, which Gary Vee says is extremely important. His main advice to younger people is to document versus giving advice. It makes a lot of sense. Document the struggles of entrepreneurship, show your low points, show your high points, so that it builds a bigger story going forward. And then I read this other article by Ramit Sethi, who runs Growth Lab and I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and he went on this rant that was the exact opposite. Vulnerability posts don't help entrepreneurs. Actually, showing your vulnerability and getting good feedback on that might encourage you to fail more, which if you look at your career as a whole is actually bad because it's going to make you show your negative feelings more. Either piece of advice is true. Hide your emotions or show your emotions. I feel more for what Gary Vee is saying, but if I hide my emotions and don't be open, that also could work. And the same is true with advice and most rules that people set up. The extremes on either side are usually as correct as each other. If you use it as a template and you say, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, then yes, I'd argue that that advice is worthless and not gonna work. If you use it as a starting point, so for instance, Ramit Sethi in this article says, hide the negative feelings, don't talk about losing so much, and you use that advice to look at your past and say, oh, I have been talking about rejection too much, maybe I should cool it down, that would be the best way to use that advice. If I see two conflicting pieces of advice, like the first example I gave about the speech teacher, I'll go with whichever one feels better for me, but keeping in mind the other one. Like if I kept saying, "I know what you're thinking," over and over again, that would be too much. But if I use it every once in a while, I know that it's going to be effective for persuasion. If you found this valuable, be sure to share it with even one friend. Every share counts. We're trying to hit 100,000 subs this year, and that would be insanely appreciated. If you need marketing support for your digital agency, check out experiment27.com. Thanks.